Hello, everyone, and a huge thank you for joining us today for a discussion on how to become a Staff Plus engineer. The webinar will last roughly 45 minutes, after which both myself and the panelist will head over to the Lead Dev Slack to answer some of your questions in the Staff Plus channel. We may also have time to answer a couple of questions live, so please do submit those to the Q&A feature on Zoom, and we'll get to them if we can towards the end. So let's get started with some introductions. My name is Blanca, and today I'll be joined by Alex, Curtis, Duretti, and Maxi. I'm going to ask each of you to introduce yourselves. Could you please answer in 60 seconds who you are and tell us how you became a Staff Plus engineer? Let's go in alphabetical order by name. Alex, would you go first?
Yeah, so I've been a developer since 1999 across a wide range of industries. And for a period of 7 years, I was a front-end developer, gradually dipping my toes into back-end. And then after that, I learned DevOps, and all of a sudden I became an SRE, a site reliability engineer. That's what you get when you put software engineers in charge of operation. And it continued when my impact radius grew over one team that we were doing platform engineering. And a part of the job was to something that they don't teach you in the university, the softer skills, how to influence, how to work across the teams. I kind of naturally grew into that role. But I got the role officially when I changed job, actually, which is something that maybe we touch on.
Amazing, thank you. And now Curtis?
Yeah, hi. I started off at school as an electrical engineer, and only did like a little bit of software. But then when I got a job, they wanted me to write software, so I kind of learned on the job how to write software. I started in the defense industry, and then later moved on to educational technology. And then from there, I went into software consultancy. Um, and then from there, I went to SaaS, and now I'm a senior staff engineer at Slack. And at Slack, I joined as a staff engineer, and almost 2 years ago, I got promoted to a senior staff engineer.
Amazing. Thank you, Curtis. And next up, Duretti.
Hi. Let's see. I've been in the tech sector for about 15 years. I also started as a front-end developer, Alex, and kind of transitioned to the back end. I didn't make it as far as you did to over in the SRE land, but API development, server-side development. I started in sort of marketing agencies, and then decided that I wanted to have a little bit more impact. And at the time, agencies didn't do like much app development within sort of a consultancy model. So I wanted to be able to work on a product more longer term, and also without having to worry about billable hours. So I moved into the product space and sort of startup space in 2014. I've been doing that for the last 10 years, worked at a variety of sort of venture-backed SaaS companies. And I got the promotion to staff in a job move from when I left Slack and moved to MailChimp. I got the staff title in that move. So variety of ways to get there.
Thank you. And last but not least, Maxi?
Yeah, so I started actually as a backend engineer, but then became a front-end engineer later on. And I got the promotion at my current company, which is Help Scout, where I've been for the past 9 years almost. This year is going to be 9 years. And we also we had a mostly flat engineering ladder at the time. That this was a couple of years ago. So by the time we implemented titles, that's when I got the promotion to staff engineer, which means that there were some things I need to navigate and set the expectations of the different titles correctly. So yeah, that was my experience.
Thank you, everyone. I think my own experience echoes most of yours. I've been in software for almost 2 decades. And I did a lot of kind of hopping between industries and also roles. So I did mobile development, I did front end, I tried back end, I tried full stack, everything, kind of gone badly. And I ended up sticking to back end and then transition into data. And most of my promotions happened via job moves, except for, becoming principal engineer, which happened while I was at the BBC. And it was similar to you, Duretti, like wanting to have more impact. And then similar to you, Alex, like growing those soft skills and focusing and kind of harnessing those. So let's get started. Gaining seniority and promoting well-being hands-on software engineers is correlated with producing better quality work. You are growing a set of defined behaviors, but there's a certain point that doing more of the same stops working. We need to take a leap in a certain direction, but which one? A new puzzle opens. While this can be off-putting to some, do not despair. The first thing is to learn what is required, what tools, behaviors, and people will help you uncover it. So we're going to start with the first topic for our webinar today. We're going to focus on what does it take to become that first rank of staff plus engineering. I'm going to start with you, Maxi. What things did you need to figure out on the path to being promoted to staff?
So I'll say the most important thing will be to find out what the requirements and the expectations for the staff title role are at your current company. Every company is different. They all have different requirements and they have different processes as well. Some companies may have more of a formal process to get to staff, and for others, maybe all you have is a list of bullet points with the requirements. But no matter how complex or how simple these requirements are, I recommend just getting a copy of those and using them as your North Star for getting the promotion. Another thing that is very important, I think, it's to find who your sponsor is going to be for the promotion, who will typically be your manager. I suggest being super clear with them about your intentions of being promoted to staff. Let them know that you are working towards getting the promotion. And while you shouldn't expect a step-by-step plan from them to get you to staff level, I think it's important to rely on them for support and for feedback and just for general guidance on how you can get there to the next level. And I'll say finally, I think one thing that is sometimes overlooked, but it's very important, is finding ways to make your work and yourself more visible to the organization, both internally within your team and also externally. This can be super uncomfortable, especially for my fellow introverts, but it's very important for people to start to see you more as a leader. And the best way to do this is by leading a project, like being the tech lead on a project that is important to the organization. But even if you don't have the opportunity to do that, because maybe you won't have the chance to get to lead an important project, there are many ways in which you can do it. In my case, there wasn't one single big project that got me the promotion, but really a collection of small actions that were important to the company. And so even if you don't get a chance to take the lead on a big project, I recommend being on the lookout for this type of opportunities because they add up over time and they help you gain visibility.
Thank you, and absolutely, like it's about honing those behaviors and speaking about about what you do. Yeah, it's so key. So we're gonna move on to Duretti because you have a very interesting insight as a manager. You have someone in your team promote, recently, and So, what did it take in this situation for the person to land the promotion? What did you see?
Yeah, it's interesting being on the other side of it now. So one thing that can happen in the promotion to staff is sort of the completion of a large capstone project. And as a manager, I want to see initiative from my reports. And so in this instance, I had a report kind of dive into a very run-of-the-mill feature that we were working on and realized that our permissions model was in quite a state. And he was able to sort of make the argument that we should refactor it, break up all the work into sort of sequencing, ran the work, was super horizontal. It affected every team. So our front end team worked on it, our back end team worked on it. So it was like super horizontal. It led to a variety of things happening. We ended up like sunsetting our mobile app. It led us to the creation of custom roles for our enterprise customers. So there's strong business value as well. And then on top of all that, was the driver of the work and completed the work. I think sometimes people can get promoted before the work is finished, but I wanted to see the sort of full life cycle as well as sort of his own tenacity in pushing the project forward. And so I think there's nothing like, there's no hack to hard work. Like you actually have to finish the thing you start. And so I think the initiative, and also, I was trying to be a supportive manager. I was like, okay, let's see how we can carve out the time, I can give you the air cover to actually get this work done. So we're kind of working on it a little bit as a team, but there's nothing like seeing someone delve in, identify a business need, solve the problem, and do it well and successfully. So that was kind of what I saw when I got to promote somebody recently.
Oh, thank you for highlighting that that we need to to lead, to promote, but it doesn't mean that we're necessarily doing it all on our own. And manager can be the best person to be to be that person just pushing you forward. I think we're going to touch some of the points that you highlighted a bit later, so I'm not going to anticipate anything. I'm gonna next up. We're going to move on to Alex about what is your advice for someone who is preparing for interviews externally when they're also trying to promote to Staff Plus? Is it
Right.
harder?
Yes, I do a lot of technical interview for staff engineers. I also have influenced the staff intake pipeline for my current company. I also have a newsletter where I write about technical leadership, which is the stuff about. So I am pretty opinionated about that. For the interviews, the ones that don't make it, they usually haven't done the work, unfortunately, because we don't care so much about the leveling that you have in your current company. We rather ask questions and ask you to demonstrate or talk about the skills that you have done in the past jobs and see if it maps to the staff, the expectation of the staff level that we have at the current company. And my advice for if you're trying to apply for a staff engineer job is to do the work with or without the title. Don't care so much about the title. I can later talk more about this strategy, but generally that is the strategy I've had in my own career, is that always invest in you, always do the work, and don't say that, oh, this is above my pay grade or this is not related to what I'm doing. Do the work, because that experience will show up in the interviews that you have for the next job.
That's fantastic, and I like how you reiterate the Reddy's point on you have to do the work. It's not just about talking; it's doing the hard things. Let's hear it from Curtis next. Having been a staff engineer and now you're a senior staff at your organization, what are the key similarities and what are the difference to each one of the roles?
Yeah, it's I'll start with the similarities. For both senior staff and staff, you typically are focused on high impact work, like things that are business critical for your company. You are expected to help lead others on your team to accomplish a goal. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to write all the code yourself or anything like that. And then you're also expected to help unblock others, right? So sometimes teams can get stuck focusing on one particular requirement or feature, and the role of a staff engineer on that team is to help unblock it. Like, how can we simplify this and move forward and keep making progress? In terms of differences, the scope in which you have influence over does increase. So you may be over multiple, depending on how big your company is, but maybe your influence spans multiple pillars inside the engineering organization, or maybe you need to see how your company fits into the entire marketplace of your competitors and what others are doing, and help the leaders and executives of your company make the right decisions on where to go next. And then also the complexity. The complexity gets even higher. You have to start thinking about how does your company work in the marketplace, like I said before, but then also like what a solution may not be clear cut to exist to the business problem. And it's a blank canvas sometimes, and you may need to figure out, how can I leverage existing competencies and tools and capabilities that my company has developed over the years, months, or weeks, and remix those to attack or solve like a business problem.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. While we won't be touching, a lot on the senior staff role in this webinar, we will in the future, but that helps kind of see that there's difference with each kind of leap that you make. Okay, so Let's move on to the second topic for our webinar, which is what are the skills you need to demonstrate? So we said you need to demonstrate things, but what are these things that you need to demonstrate before the role, and what do you need to be successful once you are in the role? It might be the same, might be different. So I'm going to go back to Alex. You have mentioned before the importance of bringing people with diverse backgrounds into leadership positions. Can you tell us how you see this making a difference to being in a Staff Plus role?
Yes, a very good question, because we have to step back and see what's the value of diversity. Why are we doing diversity? Are we doing it for stats, so we look good? Or are we really looking for diversity of opinions, diversity of experiences? And why are we doing that? But it turns out that a homogeneous team actually can perform very well when you rely on unwritten rules and everyone knows exactly what to do. But where they fail is novel ideas. Or not novel problems, when there is something that's very new and you need all different ideas to solve that, which is critical in many software companies or big tech, because you're kind of leading the way. You cannot look into someone else and say, I just follow them. You have to solve those novel problems. So we use, generally speaking, we use gender, age, ethnicity, nationality, language, these metrics as diversity, which is a good proxy metric for diversity of experiences, diversity of opinions. Like if people who come from different countries generally have lived different lifestyles, different genders, they have lived different experiences. But the ultimate goal is to bring different ideas to the table. Now, here's the catch. Many companies do diversity, but they do it only at the leaf nodes of the organization tree, the engineers. And when you go up, you see that the C-level is all homogeneous. But that's exactly where you need diversity, right? Because if people cannot look up to the leadership room and say that, I see myself in that room, a person of color, or maybe a person coming from a different country, or something of that nature, different genders are presented at the leadership table. And also, it just happens that leadership really needs that different opinions on the table to be able to tackle novel problems. So that is where I think you need diversity, which goes back to the question, like, why would you need diversity for staff? Because staff is a technical leadership position. So of course, you can benefit from everything that I just mentioned for a staff engineer. So when we are recruiting, we are very careful with that metric to bring diverse talent, because currently I'm working for a car company, and there is a lot of disruption happening in the car company. You have the EV, you have software-defined cars, you have autonomous drive. And this is a very new area and era for this industry. And so we need really people of different backgrounds to come and add. I just want to close with saying that there is a lot of focus on diversity, but inclusion is also key. And I didn't know that. I actually learned this from one of my mentors. I was like, yeah, diversity, we have to increase. He was like, no, the key is inclusion. So what is inclusion? It doesn't matter that you hire diverse. If that person is not in the room, if they're not included in the discussion, you're missing all the benefits of diversity.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to reiterate that you need the diversity at each level, because otherwise the ideas that are bubbling, they will not be adopted. Like there will be no buy-in. So you need all the different angles at every rung. So thank you for bringing that point, Alex. I've heard that lots of minorities actually they don't see themselves in Staff Plus roles because of that lack of representation, but it's so important. Now we're back to Curtis. Let's focus on the key skill. I think that everyone asks whenever you are in a Staff Plus role. Is it important to code during and after promoting to the role, and why?
Yeah, this is a spicy one, and I think I'll caveat everything what I say with this is what I've seen at the companies I've worked at, but maybe it's not necessarily true forever. But my spicy take is you should continue to code. I think the time you spend coding will likely decrease, but it should still be part of your code function if you're an engineer. There's this quote from Rita McGrath that I like, where she's talking about how the more senior you are, unfortunately, the more your organization will try to prevent you from seeing and hearing the brutal truth. And the more successful one has been in the past, the less eager they are to hear bad news. And if you are an engineer, but you're not in the code base doing the coding, you may not be able to see potential optimizations, potential risks, potential opportunities for your business because you're so far abstracted from actually doing the work. And you may try to push solutions that are not for the benefit of the company, but look good on a org chart or, like as engineers, we've all done things that don't look good on an architectural diagram. Like, I'm going to store that in a database. Why would I do that? Well, that's what we have, right? Like there are some things that just don't make sense when you're whiteboarding it, but when you're actually in the code doing the work is pretty clear. So it's my opinion that you need to continue to be an engineer and code to help your organization the most, even as a staff plus engineer.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I've had many chats with staff engineers about how, techniques for them to kind of keep being close to the code when you have limited time. But sadly today we don't have time to delve into that. But I love that you kind of made the point and just left us to think about it.
Yeah.
Let's bring to Reti again, and following from Curtis' point of being hands-on. How do you reconcile this with people needing to consult you as a staff engineer and being available for meetings? That's
Yeah, because if you let it, it can take up your whole calendar. Yeah. I think there's some interesting strategies you can take, setting up office hours, making some appointments-based calendar entries for yourself so people can find you at a time that works for you. I also think people go to you because you are a leader and want to validate their ideas, and validate an architectural approach or validate, some problem that they're having. I think a lot of times when people have asked me for hands-on help, it's mostly around permission granting. Like, oh, I have this idea, I want to do it. I'm like, oh, I do it. Like, okay, I give you the permission. Like, have fun. I think a lot of times that's what people are seeking when they are looking for you. But you have to protect your own time, especially if you want time for coding, or if you want time for deep thought, which is often the request of a staff engineer.
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of the crux of the role, I find. Setting boundaries that work for you and your teams.
Yeah. Otherwise, you can find yourself working, late into the night, and sort of your day is taken up by meetings. And then the 5 to 9 shift is when you actually get some of that deep thought or that deep work done. And so you can kind of find yourself in sort of a strange treadmill of not being able to keep up. And so you can just kind of get in front of that by being clear about when you are available.
Yeah, thank you. And now, Maxi, what is the most important skill you see engineers needing to work on when approaching that promotion?
Yeah, I think first of all, I want to say that I definitely agree with everything that Iris was saying about being hands-on and keeping in the code. I think staff engineers and architects should continue to code. There is a great article I think it's by Joel Spolsky about architecture astronauts, they call it, that these people who get too caught up on levels and levels of abstraction that things stop making sense when you go down to the code level. So finding that balance is hard, but I think it's definitely important to keep coding and keep closer to the code. When approaching the promotion, I think it's really important that you demonstrate, and this ties up to what Alex and Reti were talking about doing the work, to demonstrate that you can do staff level work even before getting the promotion. It's not, typically you won't get promoted to staff and then you'll start doing staff level work. You have to demonstrate that beforehand. And this is that you have to do the work. You have to go the extra mile sometimes and show initiative and do things that are outside of the expectations of your current level, but showing that you can take on these extra responsibilities and deliver. It's one of the best ways to demonstrate that you are ready to make the jump to the next level. As for specific skills, I think there are many, of course, that are very important for staff engineers. But if I had to highlight one, it will be the ability to set technical direction. Because no matter which type of staff engineer you aim to become, whether it's an architect or a tech lead or any of the other archetypes of staff engineers, what they all share in common is that they make technology decisions on behalf of their company. So they all speak for the company's technology by setting technical direction. So this is one of the key initiatives to keep in mind. There are many ways in which you can do this. The leading at a project technically is of course one of the main ones, but you can do this by writing a really good discovery doc or a really good design spec, or by advocating for the need to pay off a specific tech debt, for example, or just by showing initiative in those small things that they don't have owners but are really important to the company, and do the work and drive those things forward. So communication and mentorship, these are all like super important for staff engineers. But if I had to highlight one, it would be the ability to set technical direction.
Thank you, Maxi. And I think that leads that very nicely into the next topic, which is about carving opportunities internally once you kind of know what you need to demonstrate to become Staff Plus. And that's like to hear you from directly, because you've seen this, on yourself, and then now from your reports. As a manager, you kind of have superpowers because you now know what it takes to get promoted. And what is your advice for people who don't know how to go about finding opportunities or stretching themselves on that path to promotion?
Yeah, that's a great question. In terms of finding those opportunities, a lot of times it is not the most interesting problem to you technically. A lot of times it's trying to solve a business problem. If there is something that can put more money in your company's pocket, that's going to be a great thing to go towards. And it's not always going to be something around, it's not going to be the most, it may not be the most like, oh, I've come up with some new programming language, I've written some new framework. Like that's very intellectually interesting to the IC and to the individual, but it's, what is, at the end of the day, it's about solving business problems with code. So is there a way for you to get closer to other business functions and figure out what they need? Can you talk to the support team? Can you talk to the sales team? They're the ones that often will interface closest to the customer and closest to the business problems that there are. So if you're looking for scanning for opportunities, the GTM side of the house is a great place to kind of go and get some ideas there. And also, you don't need permission to solve a problem with code. Like you don't. And I think one of the interesting things about being a staff engineer is you are kind of a backstop in a lot of ways. So a lot of times the problems that come across your desk are not going to be the most interesting or engaging, but they are going to be the ones that are the most complex and most in need of solving. So I think there's a variety of ways that you can go about scanning for opportunities, but it's rarely going to be what your first inclination is going to be, my experience.
Okay. Thank you for that. So yeah, stay away from the really interesting kind of technical problems and look beyond.
You may be able to like find something that's like interesting technically to you as well, and that's like a great thing to do. But I think oftentimes it's around, or if you do find something interesting, it's about making the business case. Like we should fix this because I think it will lead to, say, a speed up in, like some API method that will then mean that customers can access our things, but you have to make the case for it, right? Even if it is something you like doing, you have to make the business case for it. So it's not to say that you can't enjoy it, but you have to always think about the business case for what the problem you're solving.
Yeah. Again, something pops to my mind. There was an infrastructure migration of a data warehouse that I had to lead, and it wasn't, as an example, it wasn't the the sexiest problem. And I had no idea how to go about it, but I was able to communicate and make the decision. Do we need to migrate? Do we stay as we are? What are the risks? And it really challenged me in a different way. Yeah, definitely. Okay, let's go to Alex, because there's a downside of being staff. So one of the pitfalls of being staff is you have a lot of autonomy, but then you can it can lead to a term that is called we call snacking, which is focusing on the wrong thing. Maybe it also ties with Doretti's point about what projects you pick. So, Alex, you mentioned that you have an open to do link to a strategy document to hold yourself accountable and communicate your focus within your company. What's your experience with that?
Yeah, so to reiterate the idea, this is something that I did at my current company because it was the first time that I was a staff engineer, senior staff engineer responsible for many teams. And I got a lot of asks from across the organization because the org is really large. And to protect myself, I opened my to-do list. So one reason was to have the positive no, so to speak, as in like if someone wants something, I would just show them my to-do and say, okay, where do you want me to put it compared to everything else? Like you just prioritize my to-do. But also it goes back to one of my biggest professional fears as a staff engineer is to become ivory tower staff engineer or principal, what you call it. And these are roles that are detached from the realities of the engineer's life. I mean, think about it. Engineering managers, product managers, they are part of hierarchy and they have their own responsibilities. Like in case of engineering managers, they're responsible for engineers and engineering matters for product. They're responsible for defining the problem definition and basically defining the product. Whereas staff, I think it is, I always see engineers at the leaf nodes of the organization as my true masters. They should tell me like what is the expectation. I'm there to enable them, regardless of my direct reporting line or the dotted reporting line across the organization. So for me, this is a way to communicate responsibility and be transparent with the engineers. Actually, it led to some side effects. Like I said, I have never heard of this idea before. Maybe there are other people who do this too, but for me, it was the first. And some of the side effects, I saw that other staff engineers started doing that as well. And also, every now and then, out of nowhere, someone comes and say, hey, this thing on your to-do list, I can help you with that. And an example of that is Roman, one of my colleagues, he actually came out of nowhere and helped me with a migration project that I was running. And I had little time to code, as it is classic for this level. But he actually did the majority of the coding and communication. And this is an example of a person who, he was a senior engineer. He demonstrated the skills of operating at the staff level. And later I got a staff engineer, I sponsored him. We were hiring for staff. I was like, he's a person who we know that he has demonstrated this skill. And he got promoted into that level. So this is one side effect of that. And the last one is that it is kind of, you know, the idea of a brag doc. It kind of you keep track of your accomplishments. It's useful for when there is internal promotion, but also when you're applying for jobs. Like sometimes it's hard to keep track of what were I doing in a job like 10 years ago. You know, what was the needle I was moving? What's the impact that I drove, and how did I do that? You know, the STAR interview framework. For me, this to do also serves at that. I can look back and kind of be proud because it's kind of hard to. I have a blog post about the difference between senior and staff engineer. I can share that in the Slack channel. But basically, it boils down to the fact that the higher level you are, the closer to the business you are, but also usually the longer initiatives you drive. Like one of the initiatives I'm driving now, it is running since April, rolling out service levels across the organization. And sometimes you lose track of progress because at any point you're just seeing the next step. I miss those days when I was a junior or senior engineer and my task was limited, you know, to just today or, you know, this is sprint. You could see the progress. Whereas for the staff, since you are enabling and empowering other people and also long-running tasks, it's hard. So one of the side effects of this to do was to have that brag doc for myself and also, you know, be able to talk about what I have accomplished. It's a way to kind of crowdsource the auditing of your to-do list because everyone, you know, that everyone can see what you're doing. So that's one way not to be ivory tower. I also got a lot of feedbacks for individual tasks that I know that they have stakeholders. Since I transparently write down everything, they could just go there and correct me. I'm not known to be perfect. I make a lot of mistakes. So it's very good to get those feedbacks, which help me to actually get a better understanding of what was the ask, how do they see me adding value there? Because usually when a team reaches out, they really know the problem better than I do. but maybe they need mandates, maybe they need someone with external view into the problem, maybe they want a sponsor in the leadership table. Like, what is it that you want from me? That is something that I can get in the to-do list, something that maybe is hard to get on an async conversation on chat, or on a short meeting.
Thank you, Alex. I love how you being open about what you focus on is those documents act like a communication, which comes both ways. And the example of you were sponsoring someone to kind of promote that's really, really beautiful. Because it also relates to our next question to Maxi. What has been your experience with sponsorship for gaining visibility?
Yeah, so sponsorship, it has been crucial for me for getting visibility and getting promoted. As we mentioned before, the person most likely to be your sponsor will be to your manager. They will help you, get these opportunities to get visibility and help you in the process of becoming a staff engineer. And sometimes that's enough, but sometimes maybe you don't have the best relationship with your manager, or maybe they're too busy because they have too many reports and they can't give you the dedicated support that you need. So I think finding opportunities to establish a relationship with other staff engineers, other staff plus engineers within the company, I think is very important as well. And I know some people, maybe there's this idea of staff engineers being in the ivory tower, like Alex was saying, and some people maybe don't want to bother the staff engineers. But one thing to keep in mind is that it's part of their job, part of their responsibility also to mentor and sponsor other people. Like, it's part of their responsibilities to sort of grow the team around them and to act as a force multiplier. And one of the best ways they have to do that is to mentor other people, to find opportunities for them to grow. So I think relying on them is very important, and it's kind of like a win-win situation, because they're helping you and you're also helping them, meet their expectations. Also, about sponsorship, I want to mention that it's important to also pay it forward if you can, to find opportunities for you to be a mentor or a sponsor for other people. This is especially if you've been at the same company for some time, which is my case. You inevitably start to collect a lot of domain knowledge about different projects or different parts of the code base, and this isn't about just collecting knowledge just for collecting sake. So you have to work on delegating some of that responsibilities, documenting, and finding the people within your team that are more appropriate to tackle on some of that work. So those are great opportunities to show that you can do this type of work, mentorship and sponsorship, that are that the traits of a staff engineer. So if you can show that you can do those even before becoming a staff engineer, that will really only help your promotion.
Fantastic, thank you. And there's two really big points that I want to reiterate about sponsorship that would be a bit surprising to me. First is, the more senior you become, sponsorship becomes so much more part of your job. And this is to bring people up with you.
Mm-hmm.
And the second one is that actually sponsoring others for kind of growing and promoting actually affects your career positively, because you end up promoted at higher rates as well. So keep an eye on that, because it's a win-win situation. And we're gonna touch on, I think it's going to be the last question for the webinar today, and we'll take the last remaining slot on Slack. But I'm going to close up with Curtis and diving more into, at the staff level, you said you focus on product domain or pillar. How did you find opportunities for growth?
Yeah, that's a good question, because before I reached staff engineer, I had this thought in my mind, and let me know in the chat if any of you listening have this as well, where you think that your manager is going to kind of lay everything out for you. Like, okay, Curtis, here's my plan for you. You need to do this, and then you can do this, and then you can. That's not how it works. And for me, one of the biggest unlocks was, okay, I need to use what I'm talented at and what I'm skilled at and hopefully what I like to do, but it may not be what I like to do, and drive impact for the organization. But I also have to do this while doing my day job. So I can't let, like, my manager, Doretti's asking me, I need to do this feature. I still have to deliver on that. But I may see opportunities for other things. Because as I said before, the people doing the work, and as Alex was alluding to, those are the ones that have the most knowledge about the friction, the pain points, the opportunities for the company to get better. So find those opportunities that are real pain points, not the, well, let's just rewrite this thing in Rust. Manager, can I rewrite this in Rust? Maybe we don't need to do that right now. But if instead, if we stored our data in this way, I think it'll drop our request rate, our response times by 50% and save us X amount of dollars or whatever. And a lot of times it's tempting to think that whatever is going to drive the most impact also requires the most effort, but that isn't always true. I've seen engineers write 20 lines of Terraform that save the company millions of dollars a year. And if you can find things like that that are low effort, something you can do in a week, an afternoon, a few weeks that drive impact, that's a sweet spot. And that's how you can still do your day job and provide impact on the organization on a broader level. And like we all alluded to before, like your title is typically a lagging indicator of the level you're at. You need to be operating at that level for a sustained period of time before you get the title to match it. And the title does help, but it's not the end all be all. Like the goal is to provide impact to the organization in the ways you're uniquely equipped to provide that impact.
Thank you, Curtis. I think that's a great way to kind of wrap the panel. I've heard a lot of people saying, do I do the role before doing it? Because, hey, compensation and all these things. But at the end of the day, it's about, it's better to focus on your career growth than chase, that title and that next level. So thank you to our panelists for sharing their insights. Now it's time to wrap up our panel. So let's go around the room and summarize in a sentence. What is the most important skill to develop from your point of view in order to become a staff engineer? We'll go in reverse alphabetical order now, starting with Maxi.
So as I think I mentioned earlier, for me, the most important skill to develop is your ability to set technical direction. Because as a staff engineer, you're not just responsible for writing code, but for solving the needs and the problems of the company using technology. So focus on develop your technical breadth and spend more time like zooming out of the code and working on the big picture, high impact work.
Thank you. And next, Duretti.
The thing I wrote down was developing judgment. So I think that's very similar to what Matthew just said. But I think more than like our tastes do dictate so much of what we do. And I think being able to spot things and apply a little bit of leverage is kind of really an underrated skill. And I think on top of that, being able to be persuasive once you've spotted that thing, because you have to bring other people along for the journey to tell a compelling story. So if you can develop a good sense of judgment as well as make everyone excited to come along with you, I think those are some like really killer skills that people can develop.
Thank you. Curtis?
Yeah, I think a lot of it may depend on, what particular archetype or skills you are, if you're like depth first, breadth first, collaborative or whatever. But one thing that has served me well in any role I've been in is the ability to learn and collaborate. So if there's, some new technology, some error, some opportunity, being able to digest information and then effectively collaborate with my team on figuring out where to go. A lot of times the like how you do something can be kind of straightforward, but the what to do is the hardest part. And that's where I like to lean on staff engineers to help us find the what.
Thank you. And finally, Alex.
Yeah, I would go for balancing soft skills and hard skills. So hard skills is what we learn in university in engineering school, but soft skills is the part that becomes even more important for these leadership positions. And on Monday, I actually published a post on that. I call it TPOP, which is a mental model that has tech, but it also has people, operation, and product. And my suggestion is to distribute your energy and time in all these aspects, and don't expect that. Oh, I'm a staff engineer, so I have to be very deep in tech, because that's not going to happen. Let's be honest. You go to so many meetings, you have to write documents. You cannot be as deep as a senior engineer in all the areas that you're responsible for. Maybe in some of them you have history and you're deep enough, but this is a mental model to kind of spend time in networking, having those dotted reporting lines, building relationships, because later you may need that influence power inside the organization. And also operation, what's the culture, what's the incentives in the organization? And the product, because tech is a solution to a problem. The problem is defined by the product. So it's very important to have a close understanding of the product and build and networking with the product management line, balancing softer skills and harder skills.
Thank you, Alex. For me, it's kind of everything under the umbrella of communication, either spoken or written, but also that includes listening. So listening to everyone around you and being able to tailor your message, because you're not going to be speaking to people with a technical background all the time. That, on the contrary, they're going to have increased exposure to the business layers, and they don't like any jargon. So maybe this kind of echoes my own journey, which was to kind of learn to kind of make my message more accessible to a wider audience, and that actually increases your influence, because what people want to come to you even more, and they want to tell you their problems, and they want you to kind of take on their things. So that's all from us today. I noticed there's a lot of questions in the Q&A that just popped now, but we're going to take those to Slack because they came towards the end and there's no time left. So thank you so much for all the good insights in today's panel. We're all going to be heading now to the Lead Dev Slack in the hashtag Staff Plus channel. So please head there to continue the discussion. We'll be back on Monday, the 1st of May, for our next Staff Plus webinar, where we'll be discussing how to promote to the next Staff Plus level in your organization. Look out for the announcement in the coming weeks. Thank you for joining, and hope to see you next time. Bye.